All right, ladies and gentlemen, what we are going to be doing today is we are going to be doing our thumbnail sketches. So what you should have is the tracing square and the worksheet. You should also have done all of the previous worksheets. That means your observational drawing, your cultural symbols or your cultural patterns, your fonts, and your symbols, because all of these are going to get put together into your thumbnail sketch. So, the first thing you are going to do is you're going to take glue and you're going to glue your criteria list onto the edge of the page. You can pretty much put it wherever on the page you want. I recommend putting it towards an edge because it makes it a little easier to fit all your squares. Now, what you're going to do is then you're going to take the tracing square, and you can do this part in marker so that when you're erasing and fixing, you don't have to redraw it. You're going to trace the square 3 times. You're going to do 3 different versions. So however you can fit these 3 squares on your paper, you've got to fit them all on the same page. So I traced my 3 squares. Now, all of the things that you're going to be putting together, all of the things that we've made so far need to be combined. Now, the order that is here is probably the order, and all of the things you need are right over here, is probably the order in which you want to do things. So then you can even make yourself a note. You want to do the border first, then you want to do your tree. These 2 things should break up and fill the most of your space. And then you're going to have your font in your tree, and then you're going to have your images. And then you're going to add any patterns. So when you are putting this together, you're going to think about a good composition. So you're going to follow the rules of a good composition. They're all listed right here, which is not being centered, having cropping, having overlapping. Overlapping is one we're going to really focus on this time. Having balance, and filling the page is the other one we're going to focus on this time. So the rest of this should be done in pencil. So I'm going to start here. The first thing you need to do is put your border. That is, if you go back, that is here. You're going to be taking at least 2 of the cultures from up here and combining their patterns to make a border. Now you want your border not to be super thin. So if you do something like this, it's not going to work. It's going to be too thin, and you're not going to really have enough, you're going to have too much space to fill. So you want your border to be kind of thick. It can even be thicker on one side than the other. It could even be not square. So if I do my border here, that would be a decent sized border. I could do something like, I could do a border that's like a triangle. So right now I'm thinking about the space that's outside here. This is my empty space that I'm going to have to fill. All of this and all of this is going to get filled with patterns at the end. So I'm going to work on all 3 at once so that you can kind of see how to do this. So I think this one I'm going to do, like, leave myself a big thick space up at the top. Okay, so next is my abstracted tree. So I'm going to go back to this worksheet where I abstracted my trees. Now for here, I just abstracted one branch. I'm going to take this abstracted branch and turn it into a whole tree. So if for example, I take this first one that's super curly, I start with the trunk. So I'm going to make my trunk nice and big. It might even have some roots that are up here and curly. You want to make sure your tree has a shape, and you want to make sure your branches are going across my big empty space. So I can even curl these a little bit more. So I'm breaking this branch. I've got too much empty space down here, so maybe I take a branch here and curl. Now, anywhere where my tree is overlapping my border, I'm going to erase my border. This is why I didn't put the pattern in my border yet. Anywhere where my tree combines kind of with 2 branches, I'm going to erase that too. So then I've got my big tree going across the space, breaking up this space here. Now the next step is to put my font inside my tree, and that's where we go back here. Now the reason for these shapes were this is kind of like the branch shape, this is kind of a root shape, this is kind of a trunk shape. So I could think about anywhere where I could put my branch or my name in my tree. The other thing that some people have done, and you can feel free to do, is if you want to put, for example, if I wanted to put my name here in my border, as long as it's filling up that space of border, I could do that. I prefer the concept of it being in a tree. So I'm going to actually turn mine and make it nice and big. And I'm going to use the same kind of curly font so that it's filling up and the space. You want it nice and big because it's one of the most important parts of your tree. So I've got my font filling up the trunk of my tree. I could also do it in the branch of my tree if I wanted. So I could do something like I could put my Chesser here and fill up a branch. But I prefer it in my trunk, so I'm going to erase that. Alright, so I've got this part. Now I'm going to go to my images. So now I'm going to go back to here. Now when it comes to images, you want 2 about you, and you want those 2 to be kind of the bigger ones. You want 4 to 6 from this section. Now what I'm going to do, I think, just to make it easier for me, is I'm going to do 2 from this section and 2 from this section. But if you really like your immediate family and you're not really as close to your extended family and you want to do like 4 here and 2 here, or 3 here and 2 here, or you can do any kind of combination. But you cannot have more than 8 images total. And 8's even pushing it. I'm only going to put 6 in all of mine so that my symbols can stay nice and big. So now I'm going to take, and if I go back and look, I think I'm going to take my thread and I'm going to use it. Now, the other thing that your images are going to do is they are going to give you your overlapping, and they are going to help you fill any remaining space. So what I want to make sure to do is that all of my images either overlap my tree or overlap my border. So I'm going to start with my thread and needle, and I'm going to make it really big in this space right here. So I've got my thread and my needle. Now I'm choosing also to have this going off the edge of the page to make it look a little bit more interesting. That's an option you can do, but this year that is not required. Anywhere where your object overlaps your border or your tree, it should be erased so that your objects are either sitting on top of your tree or underneath your tree, so that one of them is on top. So I've got my first symbol about me, and then let's see, what else am I going to do? I think I'm going to do my camera. So I think I'm going to put my camera up here. I'm going to make it nice and big. It's overlapping both my tree and my border and helping fill up the space up there. Alright, so then there's my camera. Alright, then I got 4 to 6 images about my family. So I think for me, my dad's image is kind of important to me, so I'm going to draw the hammer, nice and big. So see, I chose to put it here so that it fills, so it starts breaking up this space here. Where it overlaps the tree, it gets erased. Alright, and then I think for my mom, I'm going to do breast cancer symbol. So let's see, where do I have a big empty space? I still have a big empty space here, and I still have a big empty space here. I think I like that to put that one right here. So I'm going to put that symbol right here. So see how that, once I erase all those lines, that is overlapping my tree and breaking up my empty space. Okay, then I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to put, my family is French Canadian, and I think that's pretty important to me. So up here where I've got a bit of an empty space, I'm going to put the Canadian flag. And I'm going to erase where I overlap. So it's overlapping my tree here and it's overlapping my border. Now I'm going to look at this. So far I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, or wait, I've got 3 about my family so far. So I've got at least one more about my family. And if I look around right now, the biggest space that I have is right here. So I need to find a symbol that would look good right there. So let's see. Which one? Let me see what I did before. Maybe I do something about my family's religion. So I don't think I'm going to use that in my symbol pattern. So I'm going to put my cross here. So we are Irish Catholic. So I'm putting the Celtic cross here. And it's filling up that space. It's overlapping both my border and my tree. So all of my symbols are big. They're all overlapping. And I don't have any big empty spaces. What I don't want to see is if I do that one up here, I do my tree, and I have my branches really short. See how I've got all this empty space over here? You don't want that. So you want to make sure your branches are nice and long and they're thick. So you want your branches nice and long and thick. So see how I'm making it fill that space. I'm making my branches nice and long and filling up that space. And then when I go in, if I put my symbols, so this is another way to do it. If you're not going to do your symbols first, I could figure out, okay, I've got 4, 5, 6, and then I could put a symbol in each of those blocks, and I know that I've got them everywhere. So I've got my images now in this one. Now last but not least is my pattern. So I already have my border. Now I have to take some of these patterns from before and I have to fill my pattern. And I need to do it with at least 2 cultures. So what I'm going to do is I am going to do Celtic and Cherokee because I like the way those combine together. So I'm going to take, I think for this one, I think I kind of like the idea of going from a corner, and maybe I do Cherokee or I do Celtic this way. I take those kind of curly Q images and maybe I even bring them back this way so that I'm filling up this space. And the Celtic pattern goes all the way, I'm going to say all the way to here. It's going to go underneath my symbols. And then maybe from here over, I do that Cherokee pattern. Now realize, this is a rough draft. You don't have to be super detailed here. But I should see at least a little bit of each of them going across so I can tell when I look at yours which pattern's going where. You can always tweak your patterns a little bit between rough and final. So this one is now done. I have my border, I have my tree, I have my font in my tree, I have my 6 to 8 images, I have my patterns in my background, I have filled the space and all of my pieces are overlapped. So go finish all 3 thumbnails with everything we just went over should be in all 3 of them before you can move on.